The crisis in the ruling All Progressive Congress, APC, over the zoning of national offices ahead of the party's national convention scheduled for March 26 has shifted to the zones. The Caretaker Extraordinary Convention Planning Committee, CECPC, of the APC officially approved the recommendations of its committee on the zoning arrangement recently. Based on this new development, the state governors are clashing with other party leaders over who gets what in the proposed arrangement. According to multiple sources, the leadership of the APC is sharply divided over micro-zoning of the party's offices. An insider said many of the APC governors in the North Central, for instance, want the position of the national chairman thrown open against the purported endorsement of Senator Abdullahi Adamu by President Muhammadu Buhari. One of the chairmanship aspirants who spoke to this day newspaper says, since the party has allocated the position to the North Central, the zone should be allowed to decide who becomes his choice rather than imposition, as speculated in the media. Other aspirants in the race for national chairman in the zone include Senator Tanko Al-Makura and Saliu Mustafa. In the Southwest, where the post of the national secretary has been zoned, national leader of the APC and former governor of Lagos State, Bola Tinubu, was said to be at odds with the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, as well as Governor Kayode Fayemi of Ekiti State and Ogun State Governor Dapo Abiodun, over the choice of Senator Iyola Omishore from Osun State for the position. APC governors in the zone were said to have settled for Omishore for National Secretary for political strategy, end of quote. But Tinubu and former national chairman of the party, Chief Bisi Akande, were said to have opposed the choice. Similarly, in the South-South, the micro-zoning of the National Publicity Secretary to Delta State, which was believed to have been influenced by the Deputy Senate President Oviyomo Agege, this day length was generating conflict among party leaders in the zone. A lot to unpack to do.
What isn't generating conflict amongst party leaders at this point in APC? Oh, thank you. Okay. Thank you. That's very sweet of you. Well, with regards to this issue of the national chairman of APC, I'm not sure if the party will go ahead, as you just read in that report, and buck their own trend of always having a consensus chairman. It's not an imposition, as that source said. It's meant to be a consensus. And the fact that it's now been viewed as an imposition does suggest that there really is such deep division within the party. You'll recall, obviously, Chief John Odige Oyegun, Comrade and Adams Oshiomhole, both emerged by consensus. But I think those were calmer times within the party. As for the prospective secretary, the national secretary from the Southwest, Senator Iyola Omishore, you know he's had quite a checkered past with the APC. Well, AD, as it was then, he was deputy governor under AD, and he was impeached and then decamped to PDP, where he became senator under the most unusual circumstances. I'm not in the mood to rehash this morning, but has now gone back to working with the APC initially in that, very controversial 2018 Osun election, and then has now officially decamped to APC. So he's had his ups and downs within the party. Maybe that's why there's some resistance to having him on board, but we'll see who carries the day here. With regards to Delta State, Senator Ovie Agege has said that he's certain that APC will win Delta State this time, but that's less likely if there's division within the APC in the state. It's always been reported that there's been tension between him and the Minister for State for Labour, Festus Keyamo, but now it's looking like that has not been resolved. So really, APC, the bottom line is just get your act together and get the show on the road.
Okay. All right. It looks like, look, we've been focusing heavily on the APC. And one point that we can draw from this is that we've not seen the end of this drama. The APC is fighting for its own soul. The various factions, you say it's a motley crowd, not strange bedfellows. Okay, whichever phrase is correct. What we see is that there's a lot of competition within the party for control, for dominance. And okay, if you want to be theoretical, you will say that this is to be expected. But the truth of the matter is that what we're seeing, all those phrases we were using, 19 governors versus Yahoo governors, I don't know why in a political party, one group within the party will describe another party as a Yahoo Yahoo.
Shocking.
It's like saying that there are criminals within the party, because that's more or less what they are saying. And that's why I've decidedly refused to use that phrase or help Governor Akeredolu to define who those identified members are. What I see in the emerging subtext is that, okay, maybe those ones they call Yahoo Yahoo governors, they are also fighting back. And they are fighting in terms of the zoning arrangement that was announced previously by the party. Obviously, that zoning arrangement probably came from the 19 governors who now have eggs on their faces with the way the so-called Yahoo Yahoo governors have tried to upstage them. Okay? Now, what are they saying? They say that the zoning of the chairmanship of the party to the North Central is no longer acceptable, and that the favorites are not acceptable. The major favorite was former Governor Abdullahi Adamu. He is obviously no longer, the favorite, right? So who is that person from the North Central who wants to change the established calculus before the storm? Okay, if the chairman does not come from the North Central, who benefits from it? That is the question. Now in the Southwest, that is supposed to produce the Secretary General to replace Akpanun Dehahe, right? We're told, okay, some people favor the Yola Omishore, right, who joined the party. Now we are told that some forces, led by Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu and his supporters, and Chief Bisi Akande, that they don't want Senator Iyola Omishore from Osun State. So who do they prefer? Why are they making that kind of move? And I'm quoting directly from the details provided on the front page of this day newspaper today. Third, in the South, to which the position of the National Publicity Secretary was zoned. We also understand that Senator Ovie Omo Agege, who is a senior member of the party, is also having issues in imposing somebody from that zone. So you see that what we have here is personality conflict, is different positions, different forces within the party trying to seize control of it. And we have not seen the last of the drama. And I find it very instructive that the governor of Kaduna State, Governor Nasir Rufai, who came out to say, oh, this is what the president said about the fortunes of Mai Mala Buni. We are 19 governors. Mai Mala Buni had done this and done that. And it was, upfront in the media. The game has changed within a space of maybe, if you like, 72 hours, a few days. And we have not heard from him again. So you see that, this is a hall of mirrors, okay? Today is this group that is winning. Tomorrow is that group that is winning. And the spanner was thrown into the works in the APC by INEC. When INEC pulled up the rules and said, according to the guidelines, according to Section 82, nobody can come and take any decision, either with regard to convention or with regard to a National Executive Committee meeting without following the rules. Okay? So that altered the arrangement almost immediately. So I think that, we'll return to the point of the president, that the APC and the various gladiators, they have an obligation to learn from history. We saw it. It happened in the PDP. And the PDP paid a very heavy price for it. So if the leaders of the APC are unable to put their house together and they are unable to have a successful convention, then of course they will have themselves to blame. It may not even be the PDP that will run away with the victory, but they should be reminded that the Nigerian people are watching. In many states in 2014, 2015, the PDP exposed itself as a party that was troubled. The APC is doing almost exactly the same thing right now. But at the end of the day, we'll see the final decision rests with the people of Nigeria. And we hope that every opportunity will be provided for Nigerians to make an informed choice. And that informed choice will be based not just on, propaganda, but based on the conduct of the political parties and also of their political leaders.
So for me, how well can I illustrate what's happening in the APC? Yes, it's going to be from a Korean a Korean drama on Netflix called Squid Game. So the APC members are playing something called the Squid Game. Very interesting Korean drama on Netflix. And they're all fighting for survival. And like Senator Ogunseyi Adeleye said, though microzone is going to cause a lot of problem, because he knew that was going to cause a lot of problem. And that's what is happening here. They're all fighting for survival, and they're all fighting to reach the finish point to win the big prize, like in Squid Game, which is the presidency. So the fight is on. When I saw that list, and I saw the name of Senator Yola Omishore being put forward, I knew that Chief Bisi Akande and Bola Ahmed Tinubu would say no to it. Because if you remember Senator Yola Omishore's antecedents, what he did to Bisi Akande,
to get himself impeached.
Impeached. And if you read Bisi Akande's book, you will know that it's a no-no. And Senator Yola Omishore has been somebody that can always hold them in the jugular. You remember just what he did, how he did a good deal in the last 2 Osun elections, that the deciding vote had to come for him. He had to pally up with the APC.
The beautiful bride.
The beautiful bride. So that's who he is. He's a political strategist, formerly a strong member of the PDP, but now wherever fits him. In Delta, the fight between Festus Keyamo and Obioma Agege is down to the wires. And that's why when Obioma Agege is saying, the APC might take Delta State, I'm like, for where? In Warri Parlance, for where? Where and what will happen? Because even when they were united and they had a stronger candidate that had influence and name recognition, and I'm talking about, what's his name now? Goodness me, I forget his name. Top Warri politician, the one that planned the coup, that was part of the coup. Great Ogboru. Even when they had Great Ogboru, a Great Ogboru that could go to a DPP, an unknown party without structure, and still get over 500,000 votes in Delta elections, even when the APC had a Great Ogboru, they couldn't still nick Delta. So if they can't do it with a Great Ogboru, how will they do it with this infighting going on with Obioma Agege and Festus Keyamo? So that's another one settled. And up north, it's going to be a battle for contestation. So everybody's fighting to stay alive in this Squid Game because they know if they don't stay alive, they'll die politically. And most of them are beginning to get to the end of their political shelf life. So it is a dire case. It's interesting drama. Get your popcorn. Let's sit down and watch this. It's unfolding. That's all on news headlines. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll have Rotu Sodiri, Michael Wisna, Adesu Aurora, Aaron Akerjala to give us updates on Africa, global business, COVID-19 and sporting activities across the globe. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. For Global Business Update, Michael Wilson joins us now from London. Good morning, Mr. Wilson.
Good morning. So, all the volatility you'd naturally expect, plus value growth away from that kind of jargon. Basically, people getting out of tech stocks and buying companies that make things you can actually touch. So there you go. Hong Kong, first of all, then let's look at the Asia Pacific markets, and falls down about 3%. Shares in China all down. They're lagging happening in the Pacific. Basically, it's worrying about it delisting in the United States. That's a kind of about it. Chinese tax. And basically, although they left their one of their key rates unchanged, did the Central Bank of China. So not too much surprises there, but good retail sales coming out of China. All their industrial data actually beat all the expectations of it. Retail sales up 6.7%, steady growth in auto sales as well. And what the authorities there do is combine so that it levels out the effects of the Lunar New Year celebrations and so on. But it could be that the COVID outbreaks and the lockdowns in China reverse all those gains. But we won't know that until we see next month's figures. others. As far as the United States is concerned, stock futures rose very, very slightly. On obviously Wall Street is waiting for the Fed rate hike, which is expected to be 0.25%. If it's bigger than that, then the markets will worry. I suspect it probably will be 0.25%, and that's what people are expecting right now. The Dow Jones. Investors are actually watching the ongoing conflict clearly between Russia and Ukraine, and the various little bits of news that we're getting out of there, positive, negative, about peace talks and so on. Talking of Russia, President Putin has allowed Russian airlines to fly £10 billion worth of foreign-owned planes domestically. In other words, the lessors of those planes are getting a bit worried about this because they're not being allowed access. And Boeing and Airbus have said they have already not sending spares to Russia, so Russia will have to cannibalize what it has at the moment. But lessors getting very panicky about the amount of money that basically locks in Russia right now. As far as fuel prices are concerned, Lyft is following Uber in allowing its drivers surcharge because of rapidly rising petrol and diesel prices. The UK is not alone in this. I'm sure the same thing is happening in your country too. They're seeing a near doubling of the price of diesel, and that the Chancellor is under severe pressure. Is going to have a spring statement next week to try to cut the fuel duty. Whether he will or not, don't really know. UK is also fast tracking a new socio-economic crime bill, which the UK has been lagging behind basically the United States and Europe in clamping down on individuals, and it's going to actually hit individuals much harder, assuming that gets passed, which most people suspect it will, although it has been held up slightly in the House of Lords. Cost of living, that's really food prices could be up by 15% according to the boss of one particular food firm as a result of the various shortages that we're seeing because of the war between Russia and Ukraine. Oil prices, now here's some relatively good news. They actually slumped about 4%. But this could reverse almost straight away, and the stagflation fears are suffering as well. So basically, what we're seeing is the thought that there may be slightly less demand, but believe that really. Platinum, gold, these precious metals, which would become normal are actually falling. And nickel trading after last week's horrendous price and unexpected price rising may begin in London this week. So the commodity market's extremely volatile.
All right, Michael, thank you so much. Real quickly, what's going to be the blowback of the West not supplying parts to Russia? Will that affect the aviation industry in the world in general? And secondly, Michael, let's talk about the cost. The costs are ramping up in the UK. Cost of living is unbearable. When will there be a silver lining for the British people?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think the Russian airlines are more or less isolated now in terms, as I said, in terms of spares and so on. But what Putin is allowing is domestic airlines to fly planes within the country, which are owned by foreign lessors. So he's just trying to keep that going. But I think the airlines generally, as we were saying yesterday, people coming out of airlines now, price high. The Prime Minister of the UK, Boris Johnson, is heading to Saudi Arabia to try to convince them to increase their production. I don't see it somehow. Yes, the cost of living, food's going to be up 15%. I think it's time for a lot of belt tightening, quite honestly. And certainly fuel is up at the pumps, as it is in most countries. And the Chancellor of the Exchequer is being urged by members of his own party to somehow cut fuel duty if he can. I mean, because VAT, the VAT part's gone up, he's had a bit of a windfall as far as tax is concerned. Whether or not he listens to his own party, only time will tell. Unfortunately, won't know until next Wednesday. But certainly the cost of living is a huge crisis for everybody now.
Michael, two quick things. Jen Psaki, the White House spokesperson, says that the United States has succeeded in completely crushing the Russian economy. Is that true? She asked the question, what will be the end game? Will be for President Putin to decide. What will be that end game? What are we dealing with? Sanctions per se, or a reordering of the international order? Because if you look at some of the details, it looks like both China and Russia were prepared for this moment. Second, the UK newspapers today had on their front pages this Ukrainian refugee scheme with about 44,000 households signing up to the deal to provide accommodation and succor for Ukrainian refugees. Who is bearing the cost? Is it some kind of volunteerism, or the state is going to be part of that cost?
Well, I think that it's good that the UK is maintaining its tradition of welcoming people from abroad, as it always has done. That's been part of the tradition, whether it be in business, whether it be in education and so on. That has been, and certainly now, I think it's very heartening to see. Actually, as I understand it, one of the headlines this morning is that the website actually was inundated and actually broke down because of the amount of people that want to help Ukrainians and welcome them into their spare rooms, into their homes and so on, and maybe into empty property as well. So I think that's very. Who will actually bear the cost? I think it'll be shared. Basically, I don't think you'll find many people expressing the fact that that this is a bad thing. I think it's a very it's part of a humanitarian effort that everybody feels that they can play a part in, and I think from that point of view, it's very optimistic. As far as Russia and crushing the economy is concerned and so on, I don't think so. I think that I think you're absolutely right. Is Russia sanction proof? I suspect it's not proof. It'll certainly make things very difficult indeed. We're going to see lots more protests, but nothing will really happen in Russia until that inner circle collapses in upon itself, which it may well do. But who's to know that will be? Discussions still continue with China, quite honestly, asking them which side they're going to be on. They've been very they haven't actually set foot either side of the fence so far. Let's hope they do that. And if they want to be a channel for negotiations, then so be it.
Right. I don't think we have enough time, but I just wanted to throw in that Prime Minister Boris Johnson wrote an article for the Daily Telegraph today, talking about how the West got their approach to Russia wrong, and also mentioned the over-reliance on Russia oil and gas, but also talked about how the UK's net zero goals are non-negotiable. And with all the fracking, coal, and what have you that we've been discussing, how is that balance going to be achieved? But maybe we'll discuss that tomorrow, because it appears that we've run out of time. Thank you so much, Mr. Wilson. Now, our dependable Rotis Odiri is here to give us an African business update. Good morning.
Yes, good morning, Tundu. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Doctor. We have an update on the aviation saga, which we're going to begin with here. The airline operators of Nigeria met with the House of Representatives and the NNPC, talking about the issue with aviation fuel and how it's so high. So Oscar Onyema, CEO of Air Peace, is also, I believe, the vice president of the Airline Association of Airline Association of Nigeria. He's the VP. He said a lot yesterday. He said that they only got 3 days left to stay in operations because prices are so high. In other climes, 70% or 30 to 40% of overheads for airlines is for fuel. Here in Nigeria, it's 70%. And he said that was before the scarcity issue came on board. He said if nothing is done, 120,000 naira would be the base airfare to move one way. He also said that they're going to need import licenses. That's the airlines themselves will need import licenses so they can bring in fuel themselves. He accused oil marketers of being opaque when it comes to prices, even though it's deregulated. So they had this full meeting. We put this graphic up. This was a week ago. This is when everything came up. We're like, okay, what are the options that that they have, right? This is last week. We said, okay, raise prices of airfare. That's option one. Well, two, you can subsidize jet fuel. That is basically the government stepping and pay for it. You can grant a kind of bailout to the airlines, or you can just do nothing and hope prices fall. Because again, this is deregulated. Well, apparently, late yesterday, they came to an agreement. And here, let's take a listen. This is Mele Kyari, CEO of NNPC Limited. Let's listen to what he had to say.
In 3 days' time, representations from Moman, Dabman, and the airline operators will sit down and agree on basis of a transparent basis of pricing, which means that they have to have a reference benchmark that is quoted transparently in the market. They will have a reference exchange rate for the Naira so that anyone can compute. And then they will also engage and agree on a premium which is differs from customer to customer depending on the volume of the product you buy and then the credit limit that you are able to do. So this is one thing that they can negotiate in 3 days and close so that they can going forward there's a transparent basis of pricing. This will no doubt throw off the actual value of the product in the market. You will not see these huge discrepancies that we have seen where some people are selling at 445 and some are selling at 630. This will completely bring it to almost closure that you will not see such differences. Then secondly, also we agreed that in the interim, between now and the 3 days that they will close the basis of pricing, because the lowest we have seen as at this morning is 445, and another high of 605. There's a trader that is selling at 630. We don't think this is normal, and therefore we discounted it. So without any science around it or logic, and let me emphasize, we agreed that they will sell it for the next 3 days at 500 Naira to the liter, and on day 3 or day 4, they will switch to the new formula that everyone can access and can compute. And lastly, as requested by the Airline Operators Association of Nigeria, they will be granted license by the authority to import petroleum products, particularly ATK, so that they can have a way of benchmarking the sales from other customers. They can also bring in cheaper product whenever it is possible. Thank you very much, sir.
As somebody.
All right. So this I just caught that like early this morning right before coming here. If you to glean what he has essentially said, they've actually chosen the route of a subsidy, because he just said that over the next 3 days, while negotiations are taking place, jet fuel is going to be sold at 500 Naira per liter. That's it. Until they can now come to this agreement where there will be a reference benchmark price for bringing aviation fuel in, because again, it is imported and it's deregulated. And also, he said there will be a reference exchange rate. This is another window that is now being opened as far as the exchange rate is concerned. So, look, aviation fuel is deregulated. So if you want to import, you can go ahead and import it, and you just have to pay the exchange, the cost of the exchange rate and bring it in. So this development, it is very interesting. Essentially, what folks in the markets are saying is that the airline operators have basically gone to go and ask for help on basically paying for aviation fuel. So it's a very interesting development, but does this help? Because if you're saying that you can't handle when oil prices go up and you can't handle the deregulated markets and you're going to run to the government to get assistance, then we're right back where we started with PMS.
And that's the case with everything in this country, right?
That's where we are.
And when you look at it, yes, when you deregulate, it's supposed to bring about competition, more players in the market. It's supposed to be beneficial to the people. But why is it that in our own case, ours is so nebulous that we don't always get the benefits of the regulation? Just like we felt diesel was deregulated, but you can see what is going on. Every marketer possible fixes no price. Some people are saying 850, some people are saying the light. Yeah. And just for context, if you were to do a 1 hour flight, depending on the plane, you do about 2,500 liters of fuel. 2,500 liters of fuel. Multiply by 500, this best benchmark deregulated price, you spend about over 1.3 million.
So are you saying ticket prices need to go up then? That because I think Onyema said that the unit cost per seat is 70,000 Naira or something like that. That's the number you use.
Because if at this rate, benchmark ticket cost is 50,000 Naira.
And it's got to go up.
And you are paying close to 1.3 million Naira for a 1 hour flight for fuel alone. Do the math.
So they'd be right. So
independent fuel market.
Do the math.
Tickets have to go up. Yeah.
The independent fuel marketers are saying that the main problem with aviation fuel is the foreign exchange. Yesterday, you brought up the same issue of the foreign exchange and how there is a lot of speculation within the market. And Tuno asked you, why is it that we have this multiple foreign exchange system? Despite the fact that the CBN tried to introduce some measures, the Bretton Woods institutions have been on this matter all this while. So it continues to create a problem. within that particular sector. The airline operators of Nigeria, at one point, asked for government support. That government support, I thought, was provided, but it made no difference. At another point, recently, they said, oh, the base cost price of an economy level ticket will be 50,000. But in reality, it was more than that. Yesterday, Allen Onyama, the chairman of APC, appearing before the National Assembly, said, in fact, the way we are going, with aviation fuel selling for, I think it's about 680 naira now per liter, within 3 days, nobody will be able to fly inside Nigeria. And he said, this is not an emotional thing. This is not propaganda. He said, it is a fact. So within 3 days, if that goes ahead, you and I won't be able to move anywhere by air. And then, of course, you say there's been an agreement. That agreement, don't rely on it. Because the same NNPC GMD said, look, we have this volume, or maybe 1.9 billion or whatever liters of aviation fuel. Okay, if we have it, why is it that these airlines cannot access what is available? Secondly, if you say, oh, we are considering giving them licenses as they have requested, these same airline operators will still come back and complain about foreign exchange issues. It's not as if they are going to buy it with Naira, and then we'll be back to the same situation. So the question to ask is, what is happening around here? Yesterday, the national grid for electricity transmission collapsed. Again. Out of the about 22 or so operating discos. Yes, all of them, they said they could not provide electricity. Okay, what is it again? Diesel. The price of diesel has gone up to, they say, 780 naira per liter. So with electricity down, we cannot even have diesel. Okay, even if you can provide diesel, can you still afford it at 780 naira per liter? It means that if you have a household, you will have light in some parts of the house. You will have, light in you will have darkness in some other parts. And with these children that we keep producing, who have never known darkness in their lives, they'll be wondering, is the world about to come to an end? Okay, so these are the issues. If you talk about transportation, a train was going to Ibadan the other day, or coming from Ibadan to Lagos, it ran out of diesel. So everything is running out. In Lagos, they now say from April 1, they will collect tolls
on the Lekki
at the Lekki toll gate. Is that meant to be an April Fool joke?
Well, they said it's a 2-week holiday, so April 15th is when they start collecting.
No, well,
that's what they're saying.
Put April 1 date, and then they will eventually come around to it. So this continuous assault on the citizen is something that we really need to worry about. Who has ever heard of national grid going off? In Ethiopia, they are just commissioning a new dam to provide more electricity. This is Nigeria. We say, oh, Mambila Hydro project is not working. Until the rainy season, we cannot have electricity. This is the absence of rigorous thinking.
No, but they've debunked that. Joy Orji came out to say they should stop saying rainy season. That it's just that they are not paying.
Joy is with the Association of Gencos.
They say they are owing them.
Well, 1.6 trillion. Reaction. I'm quoting the government position.
Yeah, the government disagrees with
that. So
that.
the government is saying, if there is no rainfall, you may not get the kind of electricity that you want. It's the government position we're talking about, and the need for leadership and strategic thinking and progressive thinking.
With an election next year.
Speaking of rain, there's that saying, it never rains, but it pours.
Right.
Problems don't come in bits, they come in a battalion.
Like that.
Well, thank you, Rotus, for that grim update.
I'm so sorry. It's been grim all week.
Now for an update on the COVID-19 pandemic, Adeswa Omoran is here with us. Good morning, Adeswa.
Good morning, Tunu. Interesting conversation. I'm wondering how you tell those kids that the world is not coming to an end. It's just that there's been a power cut. Must be difficult to explain, Dr. Batty.
You are quite right. You cannot be more correct.
Okay, so let's look at the COVID-19 pandemic. The figures from the Johns Hopkins University show this morning that 459 million people have been infected so far since the first cases emerged from Wuhan in China. Unfortunately, we've also lost a little over 6 million people to this virus. And thankfully, so far, in the last 1 year or so, 10.7 billion vaccine doses have now been administered globally, although vaccine inequities still remain largely unabated. In the past 24 hours in Nigeria, the country officially reported 12 new cases from Kaduna, Delta, Rivers, and Oyo states. No COVID-19 related death was reported for that period. And the vaccination figures released by the NPHCDA shows that as at March 13th this year, in the 36 states as well as the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, a total of 19.3 million Nigerians that are targeted for vaccination for COVID have now been partially vaccinated. That means they have received 1 dose of a vaccine. And a little over 10 million people have been fully vaccinated, meaning they have received 2 doses of vaccines available. Nigeria is also rolling out booster shots. Over 500,000 people have received the booster shots across 36 states as well as the Federal Capital Territory. Well, public health experts at the WHO have begun discussing how and when to call an end to this global pandemic. They are exploring what would be an important milestone more than 2 years after the emergence of the virus. The WHO says we are not there yet to declare an end to this. While cases have fallen in most parts of the world, fatalities have spiked in Hong Kong, and China has reported for the first time since the pandemic more than 1,000 daily cases. That is, they recorded 1,000 daily coronavirus cases in China. Well, bottom line is that the WHO is discussing their discussions really are focusing on what conditions will eventually lead to us declaring this an endemic and no longer a pandemic. Recall that they declared this a pandemic on January 30th, 2020. Well, speaking of China, the country is facing its biggest outbreak, as I said earlier. They have now recorded 1,000 coronavirus cases in a day, and this has led to some stringent measures. Over 19 provinces are seeing their worst outbreaks ever. The National Health Commission in the last couple of hours said 3,507 cases had been identified, and that is up from the 1,337 that were recorded a day before. That's almost double. Now, this nationwide surge in cases has seen school closed. They've returned to virtual learning. Some mayors in the northeastern part of the country, 2 of them have been fired. And China zero policy, zero tolerance to COVID-19 may just not be working, as the Omicron seems to be very infectious. And finally, while the World Health Organization says the COVID-19 pandemic is not over, the UK is saying goodbye to all remaining travel restrictions before Easter. Now, ministers approved the scrapping of passenger locator forms and the requirement for all vaccinated arrivals to get tested, with the changes to come into force from 4 a.m. on Friday. The government will also fully stand down all remaining quarantine hotels from the end of this month. Back to you guys.
Well, that's really good to note and, you know, positive step forward. But with regards to WHO wanting to declare the world, you know, the pandemic we've all been held hostage to over in a dramatic fashion, I'm sure that'll be nice, will be helpful, but I'm sure before WHO gets round to it, different countries, even regions within countries, will do that themselves. Don't you think, Adesua? Isn't that the trend? Nobody's really waiting for their neighbor. Everybody's kind of going it on their own.
Indeed, a lot of countries seem to have moved on from the pandemic phase of this pandemic, but some would seem to be relying on that official declaration by the WHO. And with what we are seeing going on in Asian countries, especially Hong Kong and China, I think the watchword should be caution. And that's why some countries are reluctant, even though their attitude and their everyday life says otherwise. Their attitude towards the pandemic still remains that we are in a pandemic. So the declaration by the WHO will go a long way for many countries who are yet to officially declare, actually roll back the restrictions they have left. And of course, it would have implications on the pharmaceuticals who have promised to put measures in place, such as cheaper manufacturing, cheaper drugs, cheaper COVID-19 vaccines for the period of the pandemic. They will begin to roll that back once the WHO declares it an end.
Okay, let's start with WHO. The WHO, the public health experts, are considering what will be the metrics for determining at what point would the world say this pandemic has ended. But the same public health experts have pointed out that, look, it's not over yet, particularly with the BA2 variant of the Omicron variant still ravaging in many countries of the world, and with reports of increase in infections, particularly in a place like Hong Kong and also in China, and even in the UK, and also even in France. Now, what was resolved at the meeting that was held is that there is no one size that fits all. Some countries are already taking certain decisions based on the realities in their own countries, and whether or not they've been able to achieve herd immunity. Herd immunity itself, being something that you cannot easily determine, and which is why in the UK, which we talked about, there are plans to open up ahead of the Easter season, beginning from Friday. But even in the UK, in England, and in the devolved nations, Northern Ireland, Wales, and Scotland, even the figures are going up. But what we're told by the Transport Secretary is that it's time to open up. And the Transport Secretary is even echoing what the Prime Minister himself had said, that, look, the economy has to move on in spite of COVID-19. And in France, you have a similar situation. France is also, has also decided to return to normal. That's the phrase that they are using. And in France, you have immunity rate of about, or vaccination rate of about 92%, okay, out of the entire population. So each country, at the end of the day, is likely to make its own decision. As for China, yes, you recall that we started with Hong Kong. Hong Kong got to a level about 2 weeks ago of 50,000 infection rate within 24 hours. That has gone down to about 32,000. And China was concerned about the situation in Hong Kong, providing support, and Xi Jinping also intervening. But what we now have is that even in China itself, in Jilin, the Jilin region in the northeastern part that is very close to Hong Kong, infection rate has gone up. In Shenzhen, in Shanghai, in Guangzhou, in all of these places, China has had to apply the zero COVID policy, okay? But, how would that work out? But what we see is that in terms of policy, China, remains consistent with its zero COVID policy, no movement, stay in your house, But this, again, the question to ask is that how will this affect the supply chain globally? Because many of the top companies, that have their headquarters, particularly in the Jilin region, and in Shenzhen, these are major companies producing for the rest of the world. So the concern is about supply chain disruptions. The second leg of it will be what kind of lessons can other countries learn from the example of China? The zero COVID policy of China, adopted also in Hong Kong, having been heavily criticized in the Western press as an abuse or an indication of the abuse of human rights. But that's the state of the play. At the end of the day, it may look like the world we live with this COVID-19 pandemic for a much longer time. But national jurisdictions will still have to make their own decisions, because it is clear the WHO does not, offer dictations in a sense. After all, we saw that with some other pandemics before now.